I told you I'd talk about Cheryl, but first I need to tell you about Sarah and Daniel, because this case is just as creepy as Cheryl. And in October of that year, they decided to go on a weekend trip. Because Daniel had to work on Saturday, they didn't set out until 5:30 p.m. on Saturday. They told family where they were going and what route they'd be taking, and then they left. In 2016, Sarah and Daniel were a young married couple living in Dune City, Oregon. They liked hiking and camping in the nearby woods. A dive team was searching a lake near the trailhead of the forest road that Sarah and Daniel had been driving on when they disappeared. They were focusing on a drop-off point, which was about 40 feet deep. Unfortunately, the metadata had been removed, likely deliberately. And I think it's safe to assume that whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. Why did they take that photo? Most importantly, where are Sarah and Daniel now? They were familiar with the wilderness, and they would have known better than to leave their headlights on while parked on a dark road. They weren't stupid. They would have never invited a stranger into their car, especially not in a remote location like that. Plus, the person in the photo doesn't look like a typical hitchhiker. Look at how tall they are, how they're standing right behind Sarah and Daniel, like they're towering over them. I personally don't think this was a case of mistaken identity. I think whoever this person is specifically targeted Daniel and Sarah. The investigators believe that it may have been a hitchhiker. Maybe they picked up a killer, and then the killer killed them and staged the scene to look like an accident. But that doesn't explain why the hitchhiker would have taken a picture. I mean, it could have just been a random photo that the hitchhiker snapped and deleted off their phone. But if that's true, why would the hitchhiker have thrown the phone away, smashed the other phone, melted the SIM card? It just doesn't make any sense. This person or these people knew how to clear the metadata, how to smash a phone to make it look like an accident, how to melt a SIM card. This was no accident. Someone wanted Sarah and Daniel dead, but why, and who did it? But the visibility was so poor that they could only see for about 18 inches in front of them. As they scanned the bottom, looking for anything that might be there, one of the divers saw something sticking out of the mud. We know that Bigfoot isn't real. I mean, it's an internet meme, a pop culture icon, but there's no proof that Bigfoot exists. So let's be reasonable here. The truth is, we probably will never know what happened to Sarah and Daniel. Unless someone comes forward with new information, the case will remain unsolved. And if that happens, I promise to tell you about it. He reached down, brushed the muck away, and pulled out a Samsung Galaxy S4. It was waterlogged, caked in mud, but it was definitely a smartphone. It was also pretty beat up, like someone had purposely smashed the back. The screen was shattered, and the metal frame was bent. But the one thing that really caught the diver's attention was the faint glimmer coming from inside the phone. He opened the device and saw that the battery was swollen and dead. He handed it over to the lead investigator, who tried plugging it in to charge. When he turned on the phone, the first thing he saw was a message that said Galaxy S4 has been reset. But then he saw something else, something even weirder. The digital clock on the screen was stuck at 7:42 p.m., the exact time that Sarah sent that last text message. But that wasn't the weirdest part. He knew that. Because that S, the timestamp on the only photo that was left in the phone's camera roll. And that photo was the last thing that Sarah and Daniel were ever seen in. Almost there. This road is creepy, lol. This is the only image in the entire camera roll that was not deleted. In the foreground, you can see Sarah and Daniel smiling at the camera. Behind them, you can see the hood and roof of their blue Honda. Now look at their headlights. They're turned off. Makes no sense that the headlights would be turned off at night while they reparked on a dark forest road, especially when they were expecting to camp out for the night. But that's what's really stood out to me is that their headlights are off. You can see that the road behind them is pitch black. It looks like they're sitting in the middle of nowhere. What's also odd is the trees in the background. If they were truly deep in the woods, there should have been trees lining both sides of the road. But it appears as though this road is only lined with trees on one side. There's also a distinct lack of underbrush in the foreground. It looks like the brush and small trees have been cleared away, almost like a landing strip. All of this suggests that perhaps they drove further down this road than we know about. Maybe they thought they'd found a place to park when they actually hadn't. Maybe they continued on, trying to find a suitable spot, and never came back to this spot. And maybe, just maybe, whoever took this photo was waiting in the darkness beyond the range of their headlights. Then they sent another one 5 minutes later that read, "We're here." This place is crazy. No signal bars, though, so we gotta go. Their friend received those texts at 7:42 p.m., and she never heard from them again. She tried calling, but the calls went straight to voicemail. And when she finally reached someone at the campground, they said that Sarah and Daniel had never arrived. So she did what any good friend would do. She called the police. About an hour into the drive, they sent their friend a text message saying, Sarah and Daniel hadn't crashed because there were no tire marks or debris from a collision. There was no evidence that they'd been abducted. On Saturday, which would have put them somewhere between mile markers 53 and 56, the area was searched. Ostensibly nothing. It was as if the couple had never driven there at all. The investigators were stumped. The case went cold, and the only lead was a single photograph. There was no signs of a struggle. Their car wasn't abandoned on some forest trail. It was gone. The only thing the cops could find was a burnt-out cell phone. That was found weeks later by rangers near the town of Oak Ridge, about 12 miles off the main road. The phone was Sarah's, and the SIM card was completely melted. There was no way to track its last location. Sarah and Daniel had literally vanished. An investigation revealed nothing. The last ping the cell phone tower had gotten from Sarah's phone was at 8:17 p.m. Weeks after the couple disappeared, let me show you the photo. When investigators examined the photo digitally, they hoped to get a location data. Sometimes smartphones embed location data into images when they're taken. That's where things get weird, because that tall figure looming over Sarah and Daniel is a complete mystery. Who was that person? Daniel and Sarah were avid campers and hikers. Now, listen, I know it's tempting to jump to the conclusion that this is a Bigfoot case, but let's look at the facts.